Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is time for the rise of AI in the digital art market, and I'm about to hand the mic to the wonderful Seth Goldstein of BrightMoments and Automata fame.
That's it. That was quick. Okay. So we have about 45 minutes. It's not a small topic. I guess our topic is the rise of AI in the digital art market. So we can go a lot of different directions with this. Why don't we start with just a couple short self-introductions, and then I'll just pose some concepts and some questions, and we can dive in, and then leave some room for some audience questions from Ganbrud, among others, who's properly in the first row. Kelly, do you want to start?
Hi, I'm Kelly LeValley Hunt. I am the founder of Mint Gold Dust. We founded Mint Gold Dust in 2020. We started writing code in 2020, and then we took it to market. I'm also the first investor in Super Rare for my sins. John and Charlie and I used to work together at Block Apps, where we built the first enterprise blockchain as a service company called Block Apps.
Hi everyone, I'm Jean-Michel Pailhon and I'm the Chief Investment Officer of Grail Capital, and before I was at Ledger, for those of you who have a Ledger, and before that I worked in finance. And I'm both a collector and a professional investor in digital art, and AI is one of my specialty, so that's probably why I'm on stage today.
Oh, sorry. Hello, I'm Mario Klingemann. I'm an artist and probably best known for being a pioneer in what we call AI art now. So I've been doing this, whatever, since what is it officially, like 10 years, deep learning. But today I'm here as the father and guardian of Botto, which is an autonomous AI artist, and that I conceived, and which might not have been the first, but it's probably currently the most successful AI that creates and sells art on the blockchain.
Hi everyone, I'm Micol. I am curator, founder of a company called Vertical, and currently I work at Fellowship, which is a gallery that is focused on working with artists that work with AI, technology, and so on.
Thank you. So I'm Seth Goldstein. I'm the founder of BrightMoments. For those that don't know, we did this amazing tour around the world for a couple of years, minting generative art and AI art. I started BrightMoments because I was during COVID, I was taking a lot of photographs of the sunset in Venice Beach and using runway and early GAN models in 2020-21 to turn them into little AI videos, and I sold them as NFTs, and the light bulb went off. And we started BrightMoments. We did a lot of work with Jeff, among other generative artists, and I think Ivana Tao, and Ivana was here, I don't know if she's around. It's probably the first AI artist we worked with, and then we went pretty deep in. When we went to Tokyo, we worked with 10 AI artists, including Mario and Claire and Ganbrud and Pindar and Sofia Crespo and tangled others. And it was a moment for us. We saw that the meta started shifting and that AI art was becoming more and more important, not just as a series of tools, but as a aesthetic practice, as something that was collectible. And it brought up a lot of issues around scarcity versus abundance, around, what's the right way to exhibit AI art? How do you price it, particularly in a world where it's just so abundant? And then we'll also get into, around the panel, this idea of AI as a tool versus AI as an entity that can kind of live on its own. So why don't we, and we're really fortunate here to have a panel of builders, investors, artists, curators. But why don't we start with this sort of conundrum of, well, first of all, how do you use AI in your practice. When you think about AI in the digital art market, what does it mean to you right now?
Yeah, that's this question comes up quite a bit when I'm sitting around the table with artists and creators. And one of the biggest challenges that I see is that there's constantly a pull with the artist, and I guess with any creator or a founder, there's a pull to be better than what you were. And I think with AI, I think that there's always this feeling of who's winning. Like, is it what they're creating or what you're prompting it? And I think when you're creating art, also, you're or a platform. Do I feel like I'm winning when I'm building this marketplace for these artists, or when the artist comes to me and says, we have to do this and we have to create this? I don't use AI as a creator of my marketplace, but artists come to me and say, okay, I want to create this, and what do you think will sell into the market, or what do you think is going to be well received? And my feedback to everybody that comes and asks that question, and that question comes up a lot, even in multiple discussions. Do you feel like you're winning when you're creating something, or do you feel like you've created something and you've won, you've hit the nail on the head, or do you always feel like you're not making it, or you're just quite not there, just missing the pin of the needle? And so that's my biggest challenge with AI right now is it, are the prompts or the data or the vision that you have as a creator, is it that you feel like you've won when you've created something? And I think that is trying to get to that feeling of, that's exactly what I wanted to create, or that's better than I could imagine. I think that, to me, is the way you should use AI, but that's my opinion. I don't use it to create my platform, but I do, work with artists that create to mint on my platform.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to drill down a little bit, starting with Micol. So I want to talk about this dichotomy, I guess, in digital art in general, and blockchain art that you're well familiar with, but particularly in AI art, which is this spectrum of provenance and importance on the one hand, and aesthetics and beauty on the other. And particularly as it relates to your evolution through vertical and proof of people and now at Fellowship, how do you balance that? So on the one hand, you have something like a line draw, which I wouldn't say is beautiful aesthetically, but it's really important, right? And or maybe it's important, right? Maybe it's not important, right? Particularly with things that weren't minted back then, but were minted retrospectively. Some AI is beautiful and gorgeous, but maybe it's not as important in terms of the history of it as technology. So I'll open that up. How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, Fellowship started as a photography company and a photography gallery, and then kind of translated into working with artists who work with technology, predominantly with AI. I think when we speak about AI, it's such a big topic that it's even hard to just say, I'm working with AI. I use AI on my daily work and my daily job. When we speak about artists and craft, I think...
How do you use AI?
ChatGPT all the time. I love it. It's great. Best tool ever if you know how to use it. It's just a great help. But when
And what do you use it for?
It's press releases, emails, like just chatting and like doing back and forth. It saves so much time. But again, it's what you prompted. Like it's not going to give you the answer that you want if you're not prompted it correctly. But going back to like artists and craft, I think what we look at, especially with fellowship, is how artists are using the models or creating the models, and really like what is the body of work that comes out from their own practice with technology. So we are working with Mario, we're working with Helena Sarin, we've worked with Robbie Barrett, we've worked with Elman Mansimov from Align Draw. These are, in my opinion, all artists who have been working with AI for decades. And it's not even a matter of aesthetics at that point. It's just a matter of showing artists who are working with a technology, a form of technology, and have probably invented some of these models that is important for the history of digital art or history of art in general. So it's really like it almost does. It's not even like we don't work with artists who make pretty work. We work with artists who have a body of work and a practice that stands the test of time and that is important to show from the context of art and contemporary art.
Talk a little bit about just the last couple of years, have you seen some of these AI artists emerge?
Well, of course, like if we think about the easiest example is Nice Aunties, for example. Nice Aunties has emerged massively. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with her work. And she uses easily available tools, models. So it's also like a balance between finding artists who are historically very important, like Mario and others, and also artists who have managed to create a practice from models that are the ones that everybody can use, for example. So like Midjourney and so on. Again, like with Nice Aunties, she has. It's funny because whenever we talk about Nice Aunties, it's like either people love her or they absolutely find her work like repelling. But at the same time, she has created something extremely special, and she created her own world and her own storytelling and depicting, where she's from Singapore. These aunties, like it's special in her own way, and. It's obviously she's someone that probably does not have the background of other artists, but she's managed to create a really special body of work and an art practice with tools that are now available to everyone.
Thank you. Any immediate feedback before I shift? How do you feel about provenance theater?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's say, there is a need for the market to kind of, like right now we're in this phase where we're kind of everybody's trying to discover something that wasn't uncovered yet because like it wasn't simply seen at the time. So there is justification for that sometimes that somebody is actually getting the recognition they didn't get back then. But then there's also kind of, sometimes it feels a bit artificial to kind of try to twist the narrative that, well, this was important but yeah, I mean, that's just, in the end, the market decides. And that's also kind of something then gets important just because the market thinks so. And like as somebody who's been there at the time, then my personal perspective on how the history developed might be totally different. But then I also didn't know everybody and everything. So, and aesthetic-wise, I think AI has this chance to kind of draw people in, new collectors with a certain aesthetic that might be easy to understand or very decorative or pleasing. But then typically, ideally, those who stay on then get interested in the roots and learn to see, and that's important because most people who approach any kind of art first get attracted by just what they like, and then the more you learn about it, the more you start understanding earlier, maybe rougher, kind of incomprehensible work, and yeah, and maybe
So
then
like
you appreciate that.
Rafik is the gateway drug to Memo Atkin.
Could be, yeah. No, I believe that's kind of, I mean, for me, it was maybe like that with early generative art, where also kind of like you have these simple plotter drawings that at their time might also not have attracted the people, but now kind of we really start the appreciation. And the same is for, of course, there's this whole technical issue that early AI art is whatever, 32 by 32 pixels. So at that time, kind of like, yeah, people would have laughed if you tried to put that at a wall. And now there's this, appreciation for it, and it's an honest appreciation because people have actually learned the vocabulary and learned to kind of understand how it works, which is, so there are these two sides to art where kind of on one level you don't have to know anything about it and can appreciate it, but typically if you know more about the backstory or kind of maybe some technical aspects, you can appreciate it even more. And of course also in the context of the time it was made, right? The same way we can, like you take an early photographer, like a daguerreotype, daguerreotype, and like, yeah, it's kind of blurry and diffuse, but yeah, it has a history to it, and it was kind of like very unique at the time. And the same thing we have with AI art. And so the more we get educated about it, the more chances are. But then again, I'm also really happy that kind of nice aunties kind of who kind of exploded like suddenly there, and is somebody who's kind of, I mean, it doesn't even matter that it's AI, right? AI is the tool, but in the end, kind of, it shouldn't be the story. It's kind of just somebody is just like somebody else. Like there are millions of people using a camera, but not everybody is a photographer. And the same thing, yeah, everybody can use it, but there are still a few people who know how to use it in a way that speaks to people. And I think we're getting more and more of that. And of course, kind of Fellowship and other galleries now have the kind of the responsibility in there, like as kingmakers, because of course now, I mean, there are 10,000s of young aspiring artists you will never see of. So I mean, tricky balance, right? Like in the case of nice aunties, I agree, but then there might be people who are just like, well, happen to know the right people, and then their stuff gets elevated and somebody else's is just not seen. But again, I guess that's the craft of art, being an artist too, kind of knowing how to fight your way in. Kiss the right cheeks.
It's called marketing. Yeah.
And self-confidence.
Jean-Michel, can you kind of respond to how do you think about as a collector, as an investor, of the value of provenance and a certain history of AI technology versus just raw aesthetics and emotional appeal?
I will answer as a human, but I guess that if we would ask the question to relatively well-educated ChatGPT, it might answer differently. So provenance is important for sure. We look at it from a quantitative standpoint, but also from a qualitative standpoint. So also from what we try to analyze, which is the cultural significance. And indeed, I agree with Mario about the fact that I don't know, I'm not, bizarre as it may, I'm not looking on every day of what is happening on Twitter, whatever, but I've kind of seen that there was this moment a few weeks ago that people were looking for not the newest new things, but the oldest old thing in AI art. And I'm not rushing for that. I think it's not being the first, it's being the best. So, and obviously stating with the best is extremely not humble, both from the collector investor and even more on the creator side. But so we try to analyze all this and we try to find the provenance that matches all those criteria to make it both good from a provenance perspective that will last long, so that this moment which stay, and whether museums, whether curators, whether collectors will agree on this again in 5-10 years, which is very important for us. I think that's really where I focus myself on regarding the provenance. And I might prefer one that comes a little bit after than the one that was the very, very first one, as soon as I believe that, again, in 5-10 years, it will be more widespread and more famous in a way.
In the generative art market or the NFT market, we can acknowledge CryptoPunks, right, as sort of the standard bearer. What is that for you, Jean-Michel, in the AI art world? Is it Lost Robbies?
I mean, yes, there is no other, there is many, including Mario, but I think that the Lost Robbies is the, and actually, one thing, I'm a AI art collector and investors, but I came relatively late. So sometimes you need to, you can be the kingmaker, like you said, but sometimes you also have to respect the people before who said, okay, this is canonical, and I don't see any reason why Lost Robbies are non-canonical. So I basically follow the smart guy that were before me that says that, and I tend to agree.
Is there an AI artist that you don't currently collect that you wish you would?
Me?
Yeah. Okay. Good answer.
Yeah, but that's true actually. And actually, the funny story is that
you mean Botto or Mario or both?
Both.
Okay.
But Botto and Mario actually, there are people in the room probably that because I'm it's a weird thing, but being a collector and then becoming an investor, you start to have less time to collect. You have kind of a lot of LPs that say, okay, show me your portfolio, and you start to slow down your collecting habit because they would afraid that you are front running them. So unfortunately, I collect way less than I used to be, and so I got the opportunity on a couple of occasions to either buy a Botto or a Mario Klingemann work. But unfortunately, I didn't do either because I was broke or because I couldn't, get through the risk of, potentially front running what Grail Capital is doing.
Thank you. So Kelly, as an early investor in super rare, as being part of sort of Ethereum early on, like when you step back and you see crypto and AI converging into these marketplaces, into these spaces, how do you think about it? Where do you think it's going?
That's a good question. That's a really good question. I was rescuing mooncats back in the day. Does anybody have a mooncat? Ah, yes. The mooncats were around the same time as the crypto kitties. And I think prior to the punks. I was also, I love rare pepes. I probably have a couple thousand rare pepes. And does anybody have rare pepes? Yes. I have a Basquiat. Anyway, where I think it's going, I had to, brag a little bit about the rare pepes, and the scientists are amazing people. And when I look at where we've come from to where we are now, and try to think about where we're going, and to try to consider the artists as well as the collectors, because I not only created a marketplace, but I was a huge collector prior. And in order to create a marketplace, I had to try to figure out where the market is actually going and build to that. Where you like soccer players, you say, oh, go to where you think the ball is going to be. So I'm always trying to go to where I think the ball is going to be. And I really think that developers are going to start working with the artist and working with them as in taking, and I'm seeing this a little bit in fashion right now, where they take, developers or creators take what an artist has created prior, and that is the prompt. And then they work with the artist to say, okay, where do you think the ball's going to be? And then feed the prompt with the historical data or the historical creations of what that artist has already created. And then talk to them about what they are visualizing they want their art, or the direction they want their art to go in. And they're going to be working with the artist to create something in a combination of, for example, if you take, let's take a music. My mom's a jazz pianist, and it's in New Orleans, and so I always think about art as music as well. So if I take Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd and I combine it with, God forbid, Taylor Swift, what would that actually sound like if I combine those two with AI? And with art, I think that from an artist perspective, taking everything that I've created prior, if I was creating multiple pieces, and then if I say, okay, I would like to do a collaboration with Botto, for example, and what would that actually look like? And work with the two artists to combine something that is a collaboration, or just with one artist and combining what I am now feeling that my movement or my next phase of my art will look like, and combine that from an AI perspective. I think that that's what's going to start happening. And that's where we're going to really start to see the evolution of AI and the combination of AI, blockchain, crypto, digital art, and the future of art. And I think that's going to really excite collectors, because then you not just have you don't just have a rare Pepe, but you might have a rare Pepe Botto. So there's or if I took my collection even, and I prompted the AI, prompted it with AI all of my collection, and I collaborated all of those pieces together and prompted it to create one piece. What would that look like? And that's kind of exciting. And I think that's, we're seeing that a lot in fashion. A couple of kids, 19-year-old, 20-year-olds are going around to the fashion houses and saying, look, I've taken all of these pieces that you created, and now I've created 100 pieces, and with these prompts, throwing red in there, or throwing plastic in there, or some type of new fabric, metallic, shiny fabric, and throwing that in there, and this is what we're creating. And they're going to market with that right now in the fashion world. So I think we're going to see that collaboration a lot with AI and with artists that are here today.
I agree. Probably have about 15 minutes, so I have one bigger question, then I'll open it up a little bit. About this issue of autonomy and AI as a tool we use versus AI as an intelligence that kind of uses its own tools. And it feels like we're at some transitional point for a lot of this. I think there's a simple way of thinking about, maybe a few years ago we had human beings writing code themselves to make art for other human beings. And then we had human beings using AI to make art, for human beings. And now we're starting to see AI making art for human beings, and pretty soon AI will be making art for AI. And then we don't know what's going to happen. But let's talk about this sort of, and it's also self-interested. We have a booth that we helped set up with Georg and Roger called Automata at the Digital Art Mile. And it's all about systems that make art, right? The sort of history of artists that make machines that make art. And so we're showcasing Art Breeder by Joel Simon, and Abraham.ai from Gene Kogan, and Patrick Trisset's Plotter Lab, and Simon Denny, among others, and Primavera. But I want to think through, as an investor, as an artist, as a curator, and all the blending. And particularly, Mario, you're sitting in the middle, because you're Mario, the human being, using AI for a long time to make art, but you're also a human being training this entity called Botto to make art while you're sleeping and generate revenue while you're sleeping. And there's a lot to unpack here, because there's different business models. In the case of Botto, Kiki, Freza, virtuals, I don't know who here is fully degenerate, but there's a lot of tokens running around too. And the tokens do one thing and the artworks do something else in terms of floor prices and the way they trade. So it's complicated. But I think in recent months, we've had Kiki that you might want to talk about. And just how do you think about AI as a tool versus AI as something more autonomous?
Okay, well, 15 minutes. Okay, so yeah, because a lot to unpack, as you said. So personally, for me, kind of this question of building autonomous systems was always something I was fascinated in, even pre-AI. But in a way, AI is needed depending on your, doesn't it work? Depending on your definition of autonomy. I think that is kind of the first thing the issue we're facing is right now. Kind of autonomy is like the new intelligence, where the definition if something is intelligent was the bar was raised over the past 50 years, right? And now we have the same thing about autonomy, where systems claim, or people claim, it's fully autonomous, or is even like, oh yeah, truly autonomous, whereas this Botto, which is actually not truly autonomous. So this is all this kind of religious thing, and that's of course also deals then with like, okay, here's...
So what religion do you follow in this?
Okay, so I mean, for me, kind of the goal with Botto was trying to create an artist, and because that is kind of what human artists are. They have to operate in an environment which is constantly changing. And that's the problem with automata or mechanisms, is that they are usually built for a known environment which doesn't change. I mean, you have a clock and then it's a fixed thing. And art, like you create an entity which has to survive in an unknown future, right? You don't know what art will look like, what we will see as art in 10 years. But a human artists have the benefit that they can always adapt. Whereas if you write a generative algorithm now, it will not, I mean, it will still output in 100 years, but it will kind of see pretty much the same output as is today. And in order to adapt to a changed environment, the whole system has to be adaptable, and which is for me the interesting part. And yes, AI is necessary for that, because it's able to be flexible, but the same thing is that it has to update itself, which is the difficulty with Botto. So, or not the difficulty, it's kind of the setup, saying, yes, back in like 2021 when Botto came alive, there was, what was it? It was GPT-3, was it 2? It was like early GPT, so it was very clear. As we all maybe remember, it was still creating a lot of gibberish. So saying like, okay, this is now the system that will become immortal, would have been bullshit. And I hate this kind of like, and that's the other temptation with these systems. You can also have performative autonomy, or just puppet play AI, where you say, oh yeah, it's what it's doing, but in reality, behind the scenes, somebody's pulling the strings and making the narrative adapt to whatever the market wants. And well, you have to trust me that Botto doesn't do that. But I mean, so then of course we come to the point where people say, oh, but you pretend like you can tell us everything. We want a system that we can see what's going on. So there's this arms race again, where how do you prove that you're truly autonomous? But so with Botto, it was clear that well, actually it became clear to me that actually, like overbuilding it, right? Because it has to adapt, and the idea was at the beginning there is the AI, but it cannot do decisions, like certain decisions, self-responsibly. At that point, it cannot update itself, so there needs to be some guidance entity, which in case of Botto is a DAO. So there's a kind of semi-anonymous.
And the DAO is made up of human beings.
Yes, anybody
with
can
tokens
join,
that
but
vote.
it's a democratic decision, so which is also kind of tricky because you combine. Art is not democratic, so art and democracy tends to go to compromises. So, but for me, that is exactly creating interesting tension where you combine the AI with kind of a democratic system, and both of them have to work together and with some set goals that the autonomy of the AI should increase and that the system should be able to survive even if the humans are gone or if its creator is gone. So that was always the thing, like it should work without me. And got about money, yeah, so, and of course Botto is also my kind of altruistic utopian idea that in a world where kind of, yeah, the AI does the work, but actually doesn't need power. It doesn't need the money. I mean, Botto needs the money to be able to pay for the server bills and to kind of put a bit aside so it also can deal with markets that go up and down. But in the end, the idea is like in this fully automated world, the money shouldn't go to big corporations, which are in the shovel business and making us dependent on these tools, but rather share it. So, I mean, it's kind of a naive idea, but that's what Botto does, right? So everybody who helps it gets a share of its success. So,
in terms of if you close your eyes and think about or just feel, is Botto your child, your spouse, your partner, your student?
no, Botto is definitely more like, I mean, it definitely has a lot of things like a child, right? So you have this system which at first is very dependent on you, but and you have a lot of hopes in it, and you try to give it the best education and like make nice friends, and but then comes the moment where you have to actually let it go. So, and definitely, so I'm not pulling the strings. I'm just a guardian. I don't even have access to Botto's wallet. So it's kind of like already I try to make something that can, like when I get hit by a bus, gets live on. And so yeah, it's the closest is probably like a child, but maybe it's like it also has, I always like, it has the whole idea that you have an invisible entity that does not have a face and does not have a voice sounds very much like religion. And I kind of riff on that because that's kind of like one of the earliest systems that known to mankind that survived through millennia. So you have kind of an idea that gathers people around and moves mountains. And so I find that idea fascinating, that you can start from an idea and actually make an impact on the world, and it has a potential to be immortal, which of course is also a problem when you think about markets and art. You don't want immortal artists.
How old is Botto as a child in human years? Does it feel like a toddler, a teenager?
I don't know. Like time is accelerating these days, right? So I would say it's still kind of like maybe it's not 5 years old anymore. Maybe we're 9. So yeah, there's some like new things. Like it's getting into puberty now, right? There we might see pimples and but yeah, and it might start to really annoy us, but at the same time, yeah, hopefully also make us proud.
I want to see when it becomes a teenager and it starts to rebel against you.
Kind of burn down the servers.
Okay, Micol, how about thinking about what is a right? So given a world of Botto and Kiki and others, agent systems, what's the right way to exhibit them? How do you provide, because I don't know the answer, but like, is it the output or the input experience, or both?
Yeah, it's a good question, because actually, like personally, when we started working with Keke, it's weird, you know, to think about. Keke is a semi-autonomous agent that is that is kind of like, you know, similar to what Mario just described about Botto, that was launched by a team which worked with Fellowship, and we did an exhibition where we showed the various outputs of Keke, who is a she, and we had some of these outputs actually painted. So yeah, like it was very interesting for me because as a curator, my preference as of now, and don't quote me, but is still to work with living artists and not with agents. But at the same time, it's interesting to see this development because we're going to see it more and more. And I don't think there's a right way to exhibit or a wrong way. When we decided to show Keke, we wanted to show it in a physical form, which is very much what Fellowship does. And we actually had, we commissioned some painters to paint some of the outputs that the agent made. So we actually...
You commissioned them, not the agent.
Yeah.
Okay.
But
in the future, you could imagine agents commissioning their own physical manifestation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we had like a physical manifestation, and then we also had the actual model, so people could chat with Keke during the exhibition, so they could ask her questions and so on, and just kind of like see where these works are coming from, like what is the engine that is producing these works. So it was a bit of both. Like we tried to kind of like speak to just, these works can be paintings or can be prints, and they can be art, but it's also, you are training the model as you're typing and as you're speaking, and this is what it's telling you. It's interesting. I think we're going to see it more and more. I mean, Botto was, an example of it, like probably the first, as with Abraham and Jean and Kogan, what they did. Like now it's the moment that I think we're going to see maybe a few galleries or curators like working with these models. So yeah, it's just experiments now. Like, there's no right or wrong, really, I think.
Jean-Michel, I know you went down the KK rabbit hole. What did you learn? And how do you see the investment opportunities in this intersection of AI and crypto in a cultural context? There's a lot of AI, crypto, DeFi. In Silicon Valley, in San Francisco, where I'm based, it's all about enterprise agents. I went to the Y Combinator demo day for the first time in years a few months ago, and it was like 100 companies, and 99 of them were enterprise AI agents for automating some kind of back office of a hospital or a restaurant or something. But with that's going to come cultural agents and creative AI agents. And so how do you get positioned for that?
So for KK, to be short, because we just have 2 minutes, I collect it as a personal level, because for me, AI art is still a living matter. It's something that, is just in front of us. So bizarre as it may, and apart from a few collections, I don't see yet the investment opportunity because it's too young and not proven. And we've seen that, unfortunately, there can be things that are said and that are maybe not totally the reality. So we need to be cautious on this. So that's the short answer.
Boss, last question. Sure. Give us something. This is Ganbrud, by the way.
Hi. Okay, it seems that there is a lot of backlash and criticism, skepticism in the general public about AI meddling with anything creative. It looks like it's largely enhanced by the way media writes about this, general media. And my question to any of you is, how do we foster constructive dialogue where we can maybe, how do we address this?
Real quick, I think there's going to be a lot of criticism on anything new, and so any kind of technology. I've been in technology for 25 years. There's always been criticism, and especially if it's going to be really good, there's a lot of criticism. So there's going to be criticism, and the best thing to do is to listen to the critics and improve, keep improving. But with what we see right now, a lot of the times you don't see what's happening because you surround yourself around a certain number of people. But the critics are the ones who are actually going out and finding people to criticize. And so if you kind of follow, and so we need that balance, that yin and that yang. And if you, back in the day when I was a Bitcoiner to begin with. I wasn't just came in from the Ethereum perspective. I kind of got lucky and got into the Ethereum community after being a Bitcoiner and watching the Rare Pepes and the Rare Pepe scientists build on Counterparty, which is Bitcoin, was built on Bitcoin protocol. You start to, there were, at that point, there were people criticizing the Rare Pepes for creating, and then the Rare Pepes started criticizing one another, and then the fake Pepes came out. And so there's this evolution that happened. So, because of the criticism within the Rare Pepe scientists, or the scientists that were creating the Rare Pepes, there was this criticism. Then there was an evolution, and the fake Pepes came out, and then the fake Pepes became even more collectibles. And now the archaeologists are going back, the protocol archaeologists are going back and trying to find more of these little pieces that were minted on chain and these messages within the Bitcoin protocol or the Counterparty platform. So I love that question, because that's what pushes us forward. The critics are what pushes us forward. So you should listen to them, not listen too much, but listen to what they're pointing at and see hear the noise, but understand the signal.
Can I just add? I think from an art perspective, I guess, and a gallery perspective, I think a lot is down to education. Like, a lot of people actually, when they're criticizing, they don't necessarily know exactly what it means for an artist to work with AI. How much is it a tool? How much is it a medium? How much input you have? So, I get it all the time when people come to the gallery. They ask, but how was this made? And when you talk to them about how it was made, their whole conception about AI completely changes. It's like with generative art, it's kind of the same, like the code, but who does the code? What does the code do? So it's like NFTs at the start, everybody hated them, and now it's kind of okay, relatively. So it's just
good to hear. I was worried.
It's just education, to be honest. I think it really is down to that, and I think galleries and curators, have a responsibility in that. Especially if they're working with artists who are working with technology, to find ways in which they can communicate exactly how the work has been made, because it needs a little bit more communication than maybe a painting.
Yeah, I agree. The education part on it is really the challenge, and I think that is. When you start to explain to people how it's actually created, you're actually improving your way of communicating and creating. I agree with that.
We're over. We should continue this outside. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks to the panelists. Kelly, Jean-Michel, Mario, Micol. And check out Digital Art Mile and Paintbox and all the other good stuff.